Yo, what is good, trainers? I wanted to start off with just looking at Robin Schulz regional winning list with Urshifu. What? Who would have? Oh, whoops, not using the mic. Okay, with Urshifu, who would have guessed that? Who would have guessed that Urshifu out of nowhere? We haven't seen Rapid Strike Urshifu Inteleon be a significant presence since the beginning of when Fusion Strike was released. It's been so long. I mean, that was released in November, and now we're in late March, almost 3 to 4 months of no real significant showings consistently, at least. And now it wins a whole regionals. I mean, it's absolutely insane. Maybe this is just destiny giving us what we wanted the whole time, which is Fusion Strike winning a regionals, Brisbane. Single Strike Gengar winning Utah Regionals, and now Rapid Strike Urshifu winning the Liverpool Regionals. And not only that, not only did Rapid Strike Urshifu Inteleon win, but Robin also won with this absolute nut of a list. I think that this list is very, very cool, to say the least. It kind of reminds me a little bit of what I was doing with my Shadow Rider Arceus list, where I had, a Clara. I considered running a Sophia, Sonia. I ran one Piers. I had lots of one-ofs as well. One shopping center, one training center. Lots and lots of techs. But the thing about that Arceus, Shadow Rider list is that Shadow Rider draws cards. Arceus with the V-Star ability gets you whatever you want. And Robin kind of has the same sort of idea, but with the Inteleon line. The Inteleon line just lets you get whatever you want all the time. It's so good, especially if you're playing for Scoop Up Net. And I think that's one of the keys that really turned this deck around. Cut down to a 2-2 Rapid Strike Urshifu line, so you had more room for these tech cards and for more Scoop Up Nets, more consistency supporters, potentially more room to do things that are good against the meta. Now he can fit this Galarian Moltres. He can fit a Metachamp. Well, I guess Metachamp, he was always in it. Galarian Moltres can fit Hoopa, can fit Snorlax, can fit, a Clara, a Raihan, a Birdkeeper, all these one-ofs. Because before, Rapid Strike Urshifu was, to put it lightly, kind of a one-trick pony, in that, sure, you got the really strong snipe, wasn't good enough against Fusion, and no one really figured out quite exactly how to take it from being very good at what it's good at, sniping, and taking multiple prize turns and setting up KOs, keeping that, but also balancing beating Fusion. And we saw Urshifu Moltres kind of do well before, but it mainly used the Galarian Moltres V as its attempt to beat Fusion, and it wasn't consistently beating Fusion either. But now with this list that we have, that Robin piloted, you have the Galarian Moltres, you have the Hoopa, you have the tools potentially to beat Mew, and at the beginning of the format, everybody thought Mew was the deck to beat, and clearly it was after Brisbane Regionals. Natalie put up an incredible showing, playing the deck very, very well, even beating Duraludon, a deck that supposedly had a good Mew matchup, but in testing, absolutely did not. But now that Gengar had such a presence at Utah Regionals, and Mew was proved to not be the absolutely insane deck, that it was made out to be, or maybe the metagame just shifted enough to countering Mew, that it now is allowing Rapid Strike Urshifu to come back, since Rapid Strike Urshifu has a good matchup against Gengar, especially Gengar Arceus, especially if you're playing Drew's list that doesn't play the Dunsparce. He had decided that, he was just going to take the loss to fighting. It wasn't worth playing the Dunsparce, and even if you did play the Dunsparce, it was still a bad matchup, so I don't blame him at all for cutting the Dunsparce. I think that was a very good idea. But it does open up the way for decks to exploit that weakness. And that's exactly how metagames develop, right? And so now Urshifu is able to come in, be a fighting type, put all these dark types into the list, and beat Mew in the finals. Probably beat the Gengar decks, probably beat the Arceus decks. I just beat everything. And so it's really come out of nowhere, and and with an incredible list too. So let's just break down the list, talk about some of the card choices, my perspective on some of the card choices. So we've got a 4-3-1-1 Inteleon line. I think this line started to come out from Salt Lake City Regionals. Salt Lake City Regionals, people, one specific shift happened with people's Inteleon lines in decks. Arceus Inteleon was such a crammed deck. So tight for space. If you included a full Inteleon line, you did not have room for any tech cards. You became a very one-dimensional deck, just trying to Terran's care every single turn. And so people decided, you know what? I think it's time to cut the Inteleon line. And so at Salt Lake City Regionals, we saw a bunch of players, Rahul, Xander Perot, John Ang, Sam Chen. They all played a list that had this Inteleon line. It might have been 2 quick shootings, I don't remember. But they cut that 4th Drizzile in order to play potentially more scoop up nets. I think they had 3 scoop up nets. And so this takes that ideology a little bit further, where now we're saying, okay, we're only going to have 1 quick shooting Inteleon, and we're going to play 4 scoop up nets. And that change now allows us to have a little bit more flexibility with the non-V Pokemon that we play. So now that opens up the door to playing a Snorlax, as you can see in the list, which is great for Urshifu's turn 1. What else is Urshifu going to do turn 1? Strafe? Keep Calling? Keep Calling's not bad, for sure, especially in a Rapid Strike deck. But if you can Snorlax and just draw up to 7 cards, I mean, that's way better. Especially if you play, I mean, there's not a whole lot of switching outs, I guess. The 4 scoop up nets is nice to pivot into Snorlax. You do have the Tower of Waters, I suppose. 1 Bird Keeper even, to get that Snorlax in the active position. Being able to be flexible with the 4 scoop up nets because of the thinner Inteleon line, and you're still getting all the power of the Inteleon line, but now it may even be even more powerful because now you get to reuse it more often. Especially if you're able to get a scoop up net on that Shady Dealings Inteleon, put all of those in your hand, use the Drizzile again, set up the Inteleon for next turn, forcing your opponent to Marnie. It's just really, really good. Having and I think the meta has progressed to a point where we're now realizing 4 scoop up net is really good with Inteleon. You know, we started off with this, if you remember back to like the very end, right before Fusion Strike format, or right before Fusion Strike was released, Suicune was really dominant, and there was a really, really nice list that was winning a lot of tournaments, very consistent, and it had 2 scoop up nets with the Inteleon line. Then, as Suicune started to develop a little bit more, especially after Fusion Strike came out, it had to keep up with the power of Mew VMAX. And you started to see now 2 Shady Dealings Inteleons, 3 scoop up nets, 4 rare candies, and now we're just one step further now, still wanting to keep up with Mew, having to play more tech cards, which puts more of an emphasis on Inteleon. It makes Inteleon better. Playing all of these tech cards makes Inteleon better. And that's what I started to realize when playing Arceus as well. When you can just search your deck for 2 cards, whatever 2 cards you want, tech cards get better. When you have that flexibility, the power of search, tech cards get better. And that's one thing I didn't like about Single Strike Urshifu with Houndooms and stuff. It was never, it didn't have any search cards really. You always had to basically just play a supporter, either a research or a Marnie every single turn, and hope that you drew what you needed to. And a lot of the times that led to bricking. So that's one reason why I wasn't a fan of that deck. Even Mew sometimes, because it doesn't have that search, you can get these really bad hands where you're like, what do I do with this? I mean, it got a lot better after Ultra Ball. Definitely. Now you can Ultra Ball, thin your hand, as well as search for another Pokemon. But at some point, when you have 6 Pokemon on your field, you don't care about searching Pokemon anymore. And that's the only thing that Fusion searches. You have Quick Balls to search basic Pokemon. You have Battle VIP Pass to search Pokemon. You have Ultra Ball to search Pokemon, which, granted, that is what Fusion wants at the beginning of the game. What else? What other search does Fusion have? Cram-O-Matic? Cool. Flip a coin. Great. I don't know. After playing Fusion a little bit, I got a little sick of not having that search because, again, to reiterate, search is so good. And that's exactly what this list exemplifies. It's so cool. I love it. And so, okay, that was a long rant about talking about just the Inteleon. But we see a thinner Inteleon line. Okay, that's first thing I noticed. Second, as I already mentioned, thinner Urshifu line. At the beginning, when this deck, people first started playing this deck, at the beginning of rotation even, saw a 4-3 Urshifu line. I think that made sense at the beginning. Now, as this VMAX format has developed, people have realized, you really don't need a 4-3 super thick VMAX line. Even Arceus people are seeing that. Where people are running 3-2 Arceus V-Star. Granted, it's a little different with VMAXs because if your opponent knocks out 2, the game's over. So you don't really need a third one. And so I think going down to this 2-2 line is genius. You probably only want one Urshifu VMAX. And also, another important thing to note about why 2-2 Urshifu is so smart. Think about your matchups. If you are against Fusion, you don't want a single Urshifu at all. You're never getting Urshifu in that matchup. It's just going to die. Maybe if you want to close out the game or something, and the snipe is particularly useful, then you'll want to start getting it out. Other than that, do not get that card out. It's just going to die immediately. Give up free 3 prices. So there you go. There's one matchup you don't want it. Arceus, sure, you definitely want it. But at the same time, that's not... Your Urshifu is not getting one shot. You could probably get a lot of mileage out of 1 to 2 Urshifu VMAX. Against, Rapid Strike Malarm. Okay, that's one matchup you might want more Urshifu. More than just 2. But what I'm trying to get at is, as the format is shifting away from these big one-hit knockouts, the need to have a 4-3 line of VMAXs is getting less relevant, in my opinion. And so, 2-2 line makes total sense to me. Find cuts to include more tech cards, especially when you have the super strong Inteleon line. I think that's a really good change. I like that a lot. Moving on to a 1-1 Octillery line, we've already seen that pretty much. In Urshifu Inteleon lists, that's been pretty standard, as well as the Passimian and the Medicham V. Medicham V is probably in about 50-50 of these lists. But with the Octillery, I mean, it just makes sense. You want a Rapid Strike energy every single turn in those matchups that you want to use Urshifu to snipe. It just makes sense. In fact, it's kind of interesting because this list, doesn't play very many Rapid Strike cards at all. The Pokemon, sure, are Rapid Strike. I guess, 5 out of the Inteleon line, the Chilling Reign Inteleon and the 4 Sobbles. Your Urshifu VMAXs, Medicham, Passimian, I guess. So mainly Pokemon, Tower of Waters, and your Rapid Strike energy. And so it's really just there to get Rapid Strike energy, I suppose. But it's so good just to be able to search. Again, search is king. Inteleon cannot search out the Rapid Strike energy. And so having that 1-1 Octillery is too good. You can't cut it. But it is very interesting to see that Octillery is so good and getting those energies is so important that despite playing so few Rapid Strike cards, in my opinion, compared to a standard Urshifu Inteleon list, that the Octillery is still in here. Especially when space is so tight, even to the point of cutting the second Chilling Reign Inteleon, to the point of cutting your Urshifu line. Move on, I talked about the Snorlax a little bit. We got Hoopa. Hoopa's really nice against Fusion for KOing Meloetta without giving up your Galarian Moltres, without having to use something like that, or to use an Urshifu, which would be terrible, to knock out a Meloetta. Really nice inclusion for that specifically, especially when you have 4 scoop up nets. You should have pretty good mobility to be able to get that Assault Gate off for full damage. One annoying thing is that if Fusion is playing Oricorio, which they usually are, you're not going to be knocking them out. You're going to do 70 damage instead of 90 because Assault Gate does not hit for weakness. You do have the Chilling Reign Inteleon, but there's no Fan of Waves in here, so you have no way of getting the Fusion Strike energy off of the Meloetta to ping it. So if they get the Oricorio down, it gets a little bit tricky, but clearly that wasn't a problem for Robin in the finals. It did look like, I believe I saw the final list, and I think Oricorio did play it. So, that list did play Oricorio. So let's take a look at the rest. We got 4 Level Ball, 4 Evo Incense. Incredibly important for getting out your basic Pokemon. And if you notice, there's only 3 Quick Ball, which is another change that, honestly, I really like. Keep Calling is so good in this deck. And even though you have Snorlax, that's just another option, right? You have an option to draw cards. Honestly, I could see that coming up a lot of times. Looking at your hand, saying, how good is my hand? Would I rather Keep Calling, which if you have a pretty decent hand size, and especially a lot of evolutions in your hand, Keep Calling sounds great. You can get the Urshifu, you can get the Remoraid, you can get more Sobbles. Or if you have a kind of dead hand, being able to pivot into Snorlax is pretty good. I think having the option, especially when you play Force Scoop Up Net, makes sense to have that. Anyways, I kind of went on a tangent there. But so cutting down to 3 Quick Ball, you could, Keep Calling is great in this deck. That's what I'm trying to get at. You don't really need 4 Quick Ball. Level Ball gets your Sobbles, and then Sobbles gets whatever else you want, pretty much. I do think only having 3 Quick Ball does get a little bit dicey if you're trying to find your Galarian Moltres late game. I could see that being kind of scary. But, I mean, if you find it early, you can always discard it, have access to Clara. Robin did play a Pal Pad, and so you can get the Clara back. It doesn't seem too bad. So I don't mind that cut at all, for sure. I've already stressed how good the Force Group Up Net is. 2 Energy Search. 2 Energy Search is really interesting, and a lot of people are probably wondering why play Energy Search? Why not just play a 3rd Fighting Energy or a 6th Dark Energy? 2 Energy Search, very important to grab with Drizzile, 1. And also is just a solid card because I think people don't think about how important thinning the deck is. In this kind of list where you're searching all the time, searching with Octillery, searching with your Inteleon line, even the supporters are a lot of search. Raihan, search your deck for a card. Sonia, search out the energy cards or your basic Pokemon. So when you're doing a lot of search, every single draw you get is important. Whether it's a Bird Keeper draw, drawing 3. What other draw does this have? I mean, I guess Zinnia's Resolve, Cynthia, I guess. There's really not a lot of draw in here. I guess Snorlax. So even your top deck is very important. And so you want to maximize your odds of getting good stuff. If you're top decking energy, you'd rather thin those out of the deck. You want them out of your deck and in your discard pile so you can Clara. I mean, you have Sonia, so you can search for them. So Energy Search is very important for thinning the deck. It reduces your chances of drawing more basic energy and increases your chances of drawing other good things that you could just have in your hand every single turn. Now let's talk about the supporters. Because, as you may have realized, there are no Marnie, no Professor's Research, what people have considered 2 of the best supporters in the entire format. And ever since rotation have been the best supporters in the format. Instead, there are exactly 9 supporters, and they are all 1-ups, which is kind of nuts. Robin and Tord and Pedro they all came up with this list together, and they did the insane. They cut all the supporters. They cut the researchers. They cut the Marnies. What? It's crazy. I don't think anybody would have gone to such lengths, but clearly they're such good players and had the confidence, the audacity to cut Professor's Research. Crazy. And so instead, they're like, you know what's better than Professor's Research? Bird Keeper. You know what's better than Professor's Research? Sonia. You know what's better than Professor's Research? Paonia. All these crazy cards. And so it's just nuts. It blows my mind. But it gives them so much utility, which honestly is very, very valuable, like I've been saying this whole time, against multiple matchups, especially when they have the flexibility with the Inteleon line. They can do whatever they want, and this deck looks very difficult to pilot because of that. Because of the search, they have all these options available to them, setting up multiple turns in advance, especially when you don't have any shuffle draw of your own. There's no Marnie. You can plan your hand. I mean, unless you get Marnied yourself, you can plan your hand out and plan your turns ahead of time, which is something we haven't seen in the Pokemon card game in a bit. I mean, we've had we've had Marnie, Judge, Red card was popular for a little bit. That's Reset Stamp was the big one. And so now it seems we're coming back to a point where now you can start planning your turns ahead of time a little bit more. Kind of nice. Okay, so supporters, crazy. Let's go through the utility of each one. Sure, why not? Bird Keeper for a nice switch card. Especially if you have Tower of Waters in play. You get Bird Keeper into something with free retreat. Solid. Zinnia's Resolve, kind of crazy. But all of these decks that are popular are spewing Pokemon in play. Suicune got second. Arceus doesn't necessarily have to, but it does still like to have B-Barrels on the bench. Sobbles in play. Fusion especially. You're always going to pretty much be drawing 6 with Fusion, against Fusion. Cynthia's, better than Research sometimes, if you plan it correctly. Raihan, important for getting the multiple back-to-back G-Max rapid flows, if something does get knocked out. Clara for the Galarian Moltres. Sonia, to make the Galarian Moltres again, even more powerful. Paonia, because you play so many 1-ups, the Paonia I think is hilarious. Robin said, I have 21 1-ups in my deck. What's one more? Especially one that helps me get the 1-ups. I do really wish that Town Map was in format, because if Town Map was in format, Robin, tell me I'm wrong. Tell me you would not have a Town Map in this deck. Robin said, you know what? I don't have any Town Map. I'm going to play the closest thing to it. I'm going to play Paonia. Absolute madman. So this is such a cool list. You got the Pal Pad to get the 1-up supporters back. Ordinary Rod to get your Pokemon back. Sure, if you have to discard them. I mean, I'm surprised he plays Ordinary Rod when there's no Professor's Research in here. They're probably not going to be getting discarded, but I guess when you have such a thin Inteleon line, you do want the Ordinary Rod, especially the thin Urshifu line as well, and the thin Octillery line. So many thin lines to accommodate these amount of attacks. And consistency cards like the whole Ball Search line that you need for Inteleon, as well as the 4 Scoop Up Nets and whatnot. I think it's also crazy. Now we can talk about the energy. I'm not going to talk about Telescopic Sight. That should be a given. It's really good with sniping. Yeah, the energies, 5 Dark Energies, 2 Fighting Energies. I really like the 2 Fighting Energies. Sometimes you see Galarian Moltres Urshifu lists go down to 1, which I'm not a huge fan of. Instead, Robin went to 2, since you get it with an Energy Search. And went down to 3 Rapid Strike Energy. Usually, I don't think I've seen an Urshifu list with only 3 Rapid Strike Energy. It's usually always 4. And that's because the list is so heavily focused on using Gmax Rapid Flow. But now, with Galarian Moltres and with Hoopa and, I guess just those. But with those cards and the ability and the flexibility to do even more things, he probably found, in a lot of these games, I don't need 4. I can get away with 3. I can close out games against the important matchups with just 3 Rapid Strike Energy. That suffices. And so that's another really cool cut. I really like the deck building. I think the deck building is superb from these 3 players. All the cuts make sense. All the additions make sense in order to shore up the uneasy matchups that Urshifu had. Ultimately, I think Robin absolutely deserved to win this event with such a cool list. He probably played it spectacularly as well. Clearly, he did. And I have to give props. It's really, really cool to see something like this win. And I think it also is indicative of us being in a pretty healthy format. We saw something like Gengar Arceus do really well. I could play something like a crazy Shadow Rider Arceus list with the insane amount of 1-ups as well. This wins Liverpool Regionals with 22 1-ups. Absolutely insane. It makes me very hopeful for the future of the Pokemon card game. And I can't wait to see what these other regionals have in store now that we have them back. I'm super, super excited. I hope you guys are as well. But that's about it. That's going to wrap it up. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions about the list. Shout out to Robin. Such a good job. Congratulations again. And please subscribe if you like this kind of content. I'm going to be releasing videos now on Mondays and Thursdays. So feel free to subscribe and hit the bell so you get notifications in the future whenever I release something. So thanks for watching. See ya.